Welcome back, guys, and stay tuned for part 2 of our discussion on Dungeons and Dragons here on Critical Hits
and Bad Misses.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Clay.
And I'm Bo.
And here we are with part 2 of our discussion on Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
If I remember right, we last left off talking about conventions and, when we were doing the convention thing, or back when conventions were bigger and more conventions as to what they are today.
Yes.
But speaking of that, as far as like back in the 80s and early 90s versus the game today, it was huge back then. It's huge now. Where do you feel it was bigger? Do you think it was bigger in the 80s and 90s when all those, hundreds and hundreds of people were getting together across the nation were different conventions, or is it bigger now due to the social media things such as Critical Role and the Black Dice Society and stuff like that?
My opinion, and that's all it is my opinion. I believe it's actually bigger now. Just for the simple fact that more people are getting knowledge of it. It is more widespread. People are able to find it a lot easier than they could back then. Now, back then you had more diehard fans, people who, before it became cool.
Right.
You had the people who played it before it actually became cool. And I'm not saying that today's people that play it are not diehard fans, but back then, like we said, the only people that played it was like almost social outcasts. And it wasn't a cool thing to do. You didn't really want people to know that you played Dungeons and Dragons. As a majority, most people
as a
didn't.
majority, I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to say my opinion on that is, yes, it's definitely bigger now, even though I don't think there's not as many conventions around, but the number of people, I think, the numbers are greater.
Yeah. Overall, I believe the numbers are greater too. And, I think it's largely based on, and I don't want to say they're only doing it for that, but I think it's largely based on social media. Mm-hmm. It gives people the opportunity to have some recognition. It gives somebody like, oh, I didn't know he played Dungeons and Dragons. Such as some of the actors and writers and things of that nature that we're seeing play the game online now. And it's also given people the opportunity, similar to what you said, but give them the opportunity to see that the game is not just about, geeks that didn't have anything else to do. It's giving people the opportunity to go, well, I still don't know if I would play it, but I can see the appeal now. These people are getting together and they're having a good time. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is all it should boil down to. If you enjoy doing it, there shouldn't be anything...
And it's not hurting nobody.
Stopping you. Right. There shouldn't be anything stopping you from being able to do that. Which I think now, I don't know exactly why. We kind of hit it on the last one, but we don't see the backlash today like we did back then from religious groups and pissed off parents or whatever. I mean, we just don't see that anymore.
No.
And I think it's just because now there is, again, it goes to social media and the general public's ease of access to other things, as far as, there's so many more news stories out today that grabbed somebody's attention from a negative aspect as opposed to, these 6 or 7 people getting together playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's non-existent anymore. I mean, it'd be like, it almost feels like if they did a story on that today, they would be shunned for well, why are you even worried about what these people are doing?
Right.
There's so many there's so many things that are more socially accepted today than what they were back then. But there are also just as many things that aren't as socially accepted anymore. With we're kind of chasing a rabbit here, but for example, television shows that we grew up with, like the Jeffersons or Sanford and Son, with some of the deliberate use of racism and the things that they used in some of the lines in the shows and things like that, there would be a tremendous fit pitched these days with something like that. So with so many different aspects being with the camera pointing at so many different negative things across the world, they don't care about this anymore.
I agree with you.
It's just not the forefront of what they were concentrating on back then, or just picking something and saying this is what we're going to go after, or whatever. But so how do you get into the online D&D, as far as like, maybe not online, I may be saying that wrong, the social media D&D, so like with YouTube and stuff, do you watch a lot of the groups on there, or?
Oh yeah, so I'm and it's just been here lately. I'm a newer fan of one of the biggest supporters to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm thinking one of the reasons why Dungeons and Dragons is as big as it is today is because of the group called Critical Role.
Yes.
They opened the eyes of a lot of people who, didn't really understand the game. They continued with it. When they started, they were nobodies. They were just friends. They were just having fun, and they thought it was kind of a neat idea. And now it's became a very profitable thing for them.
Yeah.
But yes, I do. I enjoy watching them play, and I don't want to say professionals because they've probably been doing about as much as I have, but they are voice actors, and they do a lot more acting. Mm-hmm. They do more what they call role playing.
Yeah.
Which is entertaining, and you don't get that much in a regular D&D session. It doesn't happen because most people don't really do the role playing part of it. They want to do more of just the combat. Roll the dice, you see what they hit, see what they can kill, mm-hmm. what riches they get, and stuff like that. I see the appeal in role playing, but I think Critical Role is one of the main reasons why it's as big as it is to this day. And if it wasn't, I guess it's been maybe 6 months ago is when I even knew who they were, when I stumbled across their cartoon that they put out, which is phenomenal. Kudos to that.
I haven't seen any of the cartoon other than the trailer you showed us at one of our own gaming sessions. He showed us the trailer for it, and it was hilarious. In a lot of ways, the characters on that animated series were a lot like our characters that we had in our own game at the time. I mean, we could sit there and watch some of the things that they said or did. Their comical reactions to something that should have been serious, and we've seen that, in a lot of what our own characters do, or a lot of what our own players do in our own games, and it was pretty good. But I haven't had the opportunity really yet to watch any of those episodes. So, matter of fact, and I don't watch a lot of the online streaming D&D sessions as much as like what you do. I have watched some of it here and there. I have known who Matt Mercer is for years, but I don't regularly sit down and watch that stuff. I would like to. I don't feel like I have. When I get on YouTube, I'm more one of those rabbit hole sort of persons. And it's really hard for me to stay in line or in tune with just watching the same thing over and over, because again, I will start, an evening watching YouTube or something and start with a Iron Maiden video, and I'll end up with a video of some cowboy teaching me how to cook a pork chop. I mean, I'll never understand, part of it is the algorithm on YouTube, and I'll never understand that. But part of it is also my own curiosity when these things pop up. Now, how you can go from watching a video from Iron Maiden and then you just clicking on the links that pop up, in the feed or whatever, and then it ultimately takes you to a cowboy cooking a pork chop, I have no idea. But so, it's really hard for me to stay focused on something like that, especially for, their 3 and 4 hour episodes sometimes.
Yes.
And we discussed the other day that a 3 and 4 hour session sometimes actually isn't that long for Dungeons and Dragons. But for me to sit there and watch the entire thing and not actually be participating, I think that may be part of it. I have, I'm not disentertained by any of them. They're all entertaining. And I feel like I could really get into it if I just let myself do it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm so, my attention span to that is so short that I'm just, I'm chasing rabbits all day long when I get in YouTube. And I wish I didn't do that, but I don't understand what the deal is. But, so from the early days till now, with the introduction of Dungeons and Dragons and then Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, then it went to 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, and now 5th edition. Of course, there's also grumblings of 6th edition, which still, I would say is still several years down the road. At least from a certain standpoint, I kind of hope it is, because let's face it, we've invested some financial part of our money into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, so I really hope it stays viable for us. Now, up until a year ago, we were still using 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
We sort of branched out and wanted to see what 5th edition was like. So we bought the Player's Handbook, and then the next thing we know, we've got the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, several of the books that go with it, and we just transferred over to 5th edition, just like that. So, but going from 2nd edition straight to 5th edition. Now, you did play some 3.5 and some Pathfinder, maybe a little bit of Pathfinder.
Not really a whole lot of Pathfinder, but 3.5 I did.
Because and I didn't play any Pathfinder either, but I have flipped through some books before, and I understand that it kind of went in line with 3.5 maybe, or something like that, or 3.
I think it was supposed to be a little bit better than 3.5, and then that's when Dungeons and Dragons wanted to, or
Wizards of the Coast?
Wizards of the Coast wanted to bring out 4. It's supposed to have been another, like an upgrade, better, and I don't think it went over good at all.
See, I don't know a lot about 4. Now, I know 3, I can't say a whole lot from personal experience, but just from people that I've heard talk about it. I heard 3 was horrible.
Yeah.
Which is why 3.5 came out when it did, to take care of a lot of the functionality and things like that really made version 3 difficult to play. But then, again, I don't know a lot about 4. I did play some 3.5, and it was pretty cool because it really introduced us to the line of play that is like today.
Yes.
With feats and
yes.
The skills being more generalized and stuff like that. So I say all that to get to this. 2nd edition to 5th edition. What is the major differences as far as the complexity? It seemed to me that there was a lot more complexity in 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons than what there is in 5th edition. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you are absolutely right. And that was one of the main reasons why they're wanting to give the game more entertainment and less bogging down on the rules. And that's why they did slimline all the different types of skills you could have gotten. Instead of you get a cooking skill, a horse riding skill, a dancing skill. Now it goes under, like survival skill for cooking, and dancing. It's all under entertainment, so you can dance and sing, or based on that skill. So they slimlined the whole thing to where there's not as much rules. It made it more general, so players can enjoy what they want to do, and that's adventuring. And if they have one skill that they can worry about, that they have to roll against, instead of, I don't have that skill.
Right.
And no matter what I like about it is, no matter what the skill is, you have a chance of succeeding, just like in real life.
Yeah.
Before, if you didn't have the skill, you couldn't even do it.
Yeah.
And now you can. So I think slimlining down those rules, and the game plays a lot better. My personal opinion. I think like 5e is what we're playing. I think it is so much better than what 2 was, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and 2.5. There's just no comparison.
For me, the one thing I miss about Second Dungeons & Dragons that 5th edition doesn't have yet, or at least doesn't have as far as the actual focus on it, is I really liked the extra handbooks that you had that really specified down to, like the character. So, well, for example, like the complete Thieves Handbook, or the complete Halflings Handbook, or the complete Book of Elves, or the complete Book of Dwarves, or something like that. I liked the options that came with those books, such as like the kits that came in those books. Now, in some aspects, they did kind of do kits with 5e, because at 3rd level everybody picks an archetype for their whatever they are.
Yes.
So like a fighter picks an archetype, and barbarian picks an archetype, or whatever it's called. I don't remember what the barbarian's deal is called now off the top of my head, but
the path.
The path. Yeah. So in a sense they incorporated kits, but I liked that about 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons. It seemed that you could. It seemed like to me you could take your character and really put more into it, and actually expand on who he was and what he was, or whatever. Is there anything from 2nd edition that you like that isn't there now that you wish was there?
Honestly, not a whole lot, because like you were saying, the kits, they were nice, and I always used them. I always loved the kits, but when you sit and really think about it, they're still there. Like you said, you got the paths, you got the different things that you can do once you reach a certain level. Plus, you got the backgrounds. Now, granted, there's only a limited amount of backgrounds that they have in the player's handbook, but there's nothing saying, they don't say that's the only ones you can use.
Sure.
You can create your own. There's nothing saying you couldn't take a 2nd edition Thieves book and sit there and go, you know what, I want to make this a background, work it out with your DM, and he might say, fine.
Right.
You would get these skills and stuff like that. There's nothing saying. And homebrew stuff has opened up the door for a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, as far as for like D&D Beyond, if you're rolling up characters online, but for people who aren't, rolling up things online, they don't obviously have access to the created homebrew stuff that a lot of people have put on the website. But yes, to be able to homebrew things, absolutely. One of the things that, Bo and I recently homebrewed a magic item that he still doesn't have a lot of the details of it yet, because it's a game that I'm going to be running, but it's a coin that Well, we're not going to say a whole lot because the other players don't know about this yet. And depending on when they watch this, if they watch this, you guys better be watching this. That's all I got to say. But if they watch this, they may not be fully aware yet of what's going on with Bo's character in this game.
I don't care if you say it.
But we've taken this. We created this coin that contains the essence of 5 previous characters, and it's a cursed object, and whoever has this coin, well, at every dawn, I believe, I'd have to go back and look at what I've actually got wrote out, but every dawn there is a chance that he could change into one of these 5 previous personas. And there are some things that would stop this or prevent this, and things like that. But again, it's just to give you an example, that this game is about imagination. This game is about what you can do to provide entertainment for yourself based upon, the ruling system of the game, which we're within the rules of the game, as far as that goes. But that is, again, part of it, imagination. And to be able to take that and give Bo the opportunity to play 6 different characters in one game, but only have to concentrate on one of them at a time.
Yep.
Which is the important part, because if you've ever been a DM, or if you've ever been in a game where you continued on without some of your players there, and you had to play one of their characters or whatever, that can be difficult, playing multiple characters. So it was a way to give an opportunity to play multiple characters, but inside one, basically. But that's the homebrew stuff on D&D Beyond, yes, is really cool if people were rolling up characters on that and have access to that, because there's a lot of things that you can do with that. So from 2nd edition again to 5th edition, is your play style different? Do you find yourself playing different from when you used to play in 2nd edition? Because, just think about it. Up until just a year ago, we were still playing 2nd edition. So some of the stuff that we did here recently was 2nd edition. So did you play your 2nd edition character differently than what you do your 5th edition character?
I'm going to say, like, in a sense, maybe a little. I always played the same way. I'm always, I really enjoy rolling up characters and giving it a quirk or some kind of personality, and I like playing that personality. I did that back then. I do it now. I just enjoy the game, and I don't think the game, the way I play it, is any different. Now, with the upgraded rules and the different things that you have access to, now that has made it to where I had to change a few things. But down deep, no, I don't think I've really changed the way I play myself.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think I do either. I again, we had to put a lot more in to the characters then, because of the different, if you were playing a thief back then, you had to have your separate skill rolls for each individual thief skills, for, climbing walls and picking locks and hidden doors and, whatever. I mean, you had different, 8 or 9 different percentage things that you had to figure out. And every time you leveled up, those would go up a little bit. And you'd have to make adjustments there and whatnot. Where now it's all done under either sleight of hand or some dexterity roll, right? Which obviously makes it a lot easier. Now there's still going to be some of the diehards that wish they still had the individual skills and whatnot. But yeah, I'm like you. I like that it's based now largely just on one specific role, or whatever. One of the things, though, that you made mention of earlier was you like the fact that whether or not you were proficient in the skill, some way or another, everybody had a chance, to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the things that I don't like about that is I feel like a thief or a rogue, or maybe even in some cases a bard, because they have the jack of all trades skill set. I don't feel like the barbarian should be able to come behind the thief who just missed his roll on picking the lock and then can successfully pick the lock. Could he smash the lock? Sure. But so as far as playing a rogue type character, I wish there was a specific skill, for, and it would go that way with all classes and all characters, so like with rogues, a specific skill, whether they called that, just the thief skill, or whatever, and it's based on dexterity. And then, for example, like the barbarian could have a special skill that give him a greater chance than the wizard to actually break down a door or bust down and lift a gate, or whatever, like back in the day, bend bars, lift gates, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
That I wish there was a little bit more for that to separate the characters just a little bit.
Well, see, now where they don't have that separation, like in the rules, that's where the game master, the dungeon master, is supposed to step in and say, okay, here is, for one, if you're a rogue, you have Thieves' Kit.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the Thieves' Kit, you know how to use it, you're proficient with it, then you get that little bit bonus, extra bonus to do it. Plus, if the thief sits there and he has a 18 to pick a lock, and he misses it and he rolls a 17, the barbarian says, well, I'll try it, and he goes up there. He doesn't have the Thieves' Kit. He doesn't have anything.
So you could always make his difficulty
His difficulty is higher.
Right.
Where he might, even a natural 20 doesn't necessarily mean it's a success, because a natural 20, you still have to add your bonuses, and you could say that the chance that you have to beat is like a 23.
Right.
And if he rolled a natural 20 and he only has +2 to his dex, he's got a 22. So he missed.
Right.
Even though he rolled a natural 20.
Right. No, I agree.
That's where
the DM has to make adjustments. I agree with that.
That's where that really plays in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep, for sure. So character-wise, is there a benefit or I don't know if benefit's the right word. Is there a reason to play a specific character over another? A specific type of character over another? Is there something that you feel basically that is lacking? Like you would not play this particular character because it doesn't do enough, or there's not enough there. You know what I'm saying? Like for some people, they don't want to just play a fighter or a barbarian because they feel like after the fight is over, they're not as useful anymore.
Right. Yeah, I used to, whenever I first started, I was all about the fighter. That was my character. I liked the fighters because, that's all I wanted to do was fight. Get in there and kill things. I want to be the one that kills it.
Yeah.
As I've grown as a player, grown in age, I see the benefits of playing something else. I could see the fun in the role playing of certain things. Where you would have talked to me 5 years ago, and the last thing I ever wanted to play was a cleric. Then all of a sudden I tried it one time and I really looked into it and I found the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think I could make a cleric be as powerful as pretty much a fighter a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, my die rolls are sucky. They always have been. I get lucky every once in a while, but man, I do not roll good. But my character is pretty badass. I mean, it can be, and I get to that. So I find that thrill of healing people, being their rescuers.
Mm-hmm.
These guys might do a lot of damage, but they get weakened down because they also take a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Here I am. That's where I'm important. And I sit there and I keep them healed up. I give them the buffs that makes it a little bit better. Yeah, I'm like behind the scenes kind of hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I enjoy that. But no, there's probably not one character. The farther I've gotten, the less I like playing just a straight fighter.
So if you had a brand new player come into the situation, let's say with our game, we have a brand new player come in the situation. You're going to help him roll up a character. He's never played Dungeons & Dragons before. He knows nothing about it. He sits down. He says, I think I want to play a warlock. Would you, I guess that's kind of where I was going with that. Is there a suggestion you would have for, I don't know if I would go that route. I would probably go this route, and here's the reason why. But so to kind of reword that, where would you guide a brand new player? If you were going to say, you know what, I understand you want to play a warlock, magic user, whatever, but let me suggest this. Well, I mean, is there a particular line you would take a new player down?
Yes, I would. First of all, if someone came to me and said they wanted to play a wizard or play a warlock or something like that, first thing I'd ask them is, okay, do you know what you're getting into? There's a lot of paperwork to that. There's a lot of remembering things. And you do not need to be in battle whatsoever. Right. You need to stay back. You need to be taking care of yourself and staying out of the main part of the fight. If they seem like they could do it, by all means, I would help them all day long. But I would almost suggest a fighter at first. Baseline, just a fighter. There's a lot of stuff you can do with a fighter that makes them even more important, makes them really handy. The way you just roll up your backgrounds can change a fighter from being just a dumb stick wielder to one of the most important characters in, most charismatic.
Right.
Just how you roll up your character has a lot to do with it. So brand new players, yes, there is a certain difficulty for certain types of classes. Fighter being, to me, the least difficult to play because they are pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. Behind that, it would be clerics. Clerics are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Now, when you start getting into the thieves and the spellcasters, more of the spellcasters besides clerics, then I would, those are a little bit more tricky.
Yeah.
You don't really, especially at lower levels, because they're not going to be able to take much damage. Mm-hmm. And depending on how this player wants to play, he might be like, okay, I'm going to run in there with my dagger as a wizard and try to stab something, one hit, and he's dead.
Well,
Well,
they can't take much damage, but they can definitely take more damage these days than what they used to be able to.
Yes.
Because of Gary Gygax's initial hatred towards the idea of wizards, in this game. He was totally, against that.
Yes, he was.
And so that was what finally made him agree, to putting the wizard in the game was, well, it's only going to have a die 4 hit points. So I mean, to be able to, and at that time, it was so boring to me being a wizard. Now, players learned how to adapt to that, and they did a really, really good job, which I think further aggravated Gary in that. But they were diehard I'm going to play a wizard. I've learned it. I've read about it. I know what I'm going to do. And then the further along they got with their own experience in playing the game, the better they would play these things.
Mm-hmm.
Even this character that was not meant to survive session 0, much less get to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th level. And I just think it's a good testament to the people themselves that were playing the game at that time, and even today in some manner, because they're still limited, but now with unlimited use of the cantrips that they know, it does make a wizard or a cleric or a warlock, sorcerer, whatever, more viable.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if they run out of spell slots, they can still be somewhat useful with their cantrips. So,
yes.
To be able to master the wizard mage class back then was just great if you could do that. And we definitely know of a couple of people who played really, really good wizards even back in the day. So just again, to be able to do that was really good. But yeah, I think I would probably lean the same way with a new player. Is go along the fighter path, because most of the new players are going to, well, at least I feel like they do anyway, is get kind of bored with non-combat situations. Yeah. And so when they do have the opportunity to be in combat, you want to make sure they have that opportunity, because, I mean, you're right. There's just way too many times where they're seeing what's going on up here. They have run out of spells to cast. They still have their cantrips, but the DM has warned them, are you sure you want to cast that firebolt right there on that area? Because, I mean, you see the danger. So their next thought is, well, I'm going to pull my dagger. I'm just going to go in because there's nothing else I can do. But that's okay. Don't worry about the fact that there's nothing else you can do at the moment. So yes, I would do the same thing. I would probably guide somebody at first, brand new player, to be a fighter, because there are opportunities for even fighters, later in the game to cast spells. So then they could take that and learn the spell casting system and stuff like that, but still be more involved in the beginning and learn the game. I feel like that's the important part, to learn the game, which, to learn the game kind of brings us to our next point, our topic of discussion, the way the game has changed over the years, but has remained the same in core fundamentals and the main grip of the game and whatnot. To me, that's important. I feel like keeping the same fundamentals was important. I don't feel like, I think if they had changed a lot of that from the early days till now, it's just a whole new game. It's not even Dungeons & Dragons anymore. I mean, it's maybe with the thought process, it's the same, because, whether I know we're going to sit down and play similar and have a good time, whether we're playing Dungeons & Dragons or Vampire, or whatever.
Yes.
But I like the fact that from here to here, it's still fundamentally the same game.
Yeah, the basic core of the game has always stayed the same. It's about adventuring. It's about getting, riches, discovery of things that let's face it, most people would never really do in real life. I've never dreamt I would be any kind of Indiana Jones or anything like that. And, it lets you pretend to be something that you're not, and that's the core behind it, is giving you fantasy, giving you something to pretend. And kids have been doing that all their life.
Sure.
From a young age, kids will start out pretending to be their parents. And then, the older you get, the more you want to pretend to be something else. Mm-hmm. And even with kind of guiding it on to the role-playing games, you're pretending. playing video games. You're pretending to be, because that's why first-person shooters or first-person adventure games are so popular, because you are being that person. You become that person and everything. So, yeah, the fundamentals have stayed the same. The game has continued to grow, and it's because of it and because of different ones, it's became more popular, which gave them the ability to make the game even better. And what I really like about it, it's like I said, the fundamentals are still the same, but they listen to their players. They listen to their audience. They don't just say, well, the game is perfect. I don't, we created it. It's the perfect game.
Right.
No, they've seen what people were saying, and they are like, you know what? They might have a point. They took their advice. And that's why the game changes. I don't think it'll ever be like a completely perfect game.
Yeah, right.
But it's grown so much that way it was then and the way it is now, it's as close to a perfect game as what I've ever played.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my view on that.
Right.
Really good. I can't really see what changes they need to make, but I'm sure there's going to be good ones.
Well,
hopefully.
Well, it would have to be. I mean, because if you're gonna change or upgrade from 5th edition to 6th edition, I can't imagine what would need to be there. I mean, they already errata some of the rules anyway. So, like when 5th edition first came out, and those players' handbooks, there's certain things in there that say certain things that aren't in the newer version of the book that you can buy. It's a completely identical book, but they have eroded some of that stuff out of there. That's just that they said, well, that shouldn't have been there, or that's too strong, or whatever.
Yeah.
So they've taken that out. So with the ability to do that, I don't see why there would need to be a change either. I can't imagine what in the system is needing such a change that it's just time to scrap 5th edition and go to 6th edition. I can't see what that would be.
The only thing I can say about it would be is, like I said, with homebrew being so much more than what, there was no such thing as homebrew whenever we first started, really.
No.
But with homebrew being as big as it is now, they're wanting to maybe integrate more of this homebrew stuff.
Possibly, but couldn't they do that with just another expansion book?
They could.
Without having to go to 6th edition? I mean, that's, there was just, Spelljammer just released not too long ago. They did not create a 6th edition just because they wanted to release Spelljammer. So, no. Why would, I just don't see what is so fundamentally wrong with 5th edition that they would feel a need for 6th edition. I just, maybe 20 years from now, it's like, okay, I can see why they eventually went from 2nd edition to 3rd. Even though 3rd was horrible, they wanted to make it not as difficult a game to play. Because that's for a lot of people, they would sit there and look at this and go, dude, I don't understand. Thaco. All right? For some reason or the Thaco was the hardest thing in the world for a lot of people to understand, and I don't understand why they had such a problem with it.
I don't either.
Thaco. 2-hit armor class 0.
Yes.
So if their Thaco was a 13 and somebody had a 0 armor class, they needed to roll a 13 or better, including their pluses. But so I understand from a certain point why they eliminated some of those types of things. But I just don't see what's in it now that compares to what people had a problem with when it came to Thaco. Why there would need to say, you know what, I think we need to go to 6th edition. The only, and I hate to bring a negative connotation in there, but I think the only thing would be money. I feel like that would be the only reason to do it is because now we have more product that we can sell and people will buy it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Well, maybe not unfortunately, because I don't want to take a negative stance on this because I'm not negative in that at all. But I think that would be the only reason to do it is just profitability. I mean, I can't see any other reason why at this point.
Right.
Now, maybe somebody in the comments could say, well, maybe they can give us some ideas of where some things need to be addressed with the system or whatever. But and as right now, that'd be the only thing that I could see would be just the opportunity to make money.
Yeah, so I just don't know enough on what 6th edition is going to be.
Right.
And I know there's stuff out about
Yeah, there
it.
is. There's stuff out about it, but there's not a lot of information. So, I mean, nobody knows a lot about, what it could possibly...
And it could be that, granted, we're sitting here trying to think what people that's getting paid top dollar to come up with. And we're sitting here trying to think what they're thinking. And that's not happening with us.
Right.
So there's nothing. That's what's good about it is that there's nothing that we think should be changed in it,
Right.
but maybe someone else, and they pointed out, say, well, yeah, I can see why that would do that. Oh, yeah, I can understand that. There might be something that we're missing.
Well, sure. But it kind of goes along with the homebrew is what you're saying, because if there's something we don't like, we just don't utilize it.
Yeah.
I mean, is there enough people that don't like this one section of 5th edition, so now they have to create a whole new edition? I mean, just rip the page out of the book. If you don't like it, rip the page out of the book. I mean, there's things I don't necessarily like, but it's not a 5th edition thing, I don't think.
No.
For example, I'm not big on the idea of certain characters being able to take away from other characters. And what I mean by that is, okay, if you roll up a rogue and you roll up the rogue archetype, the arcane trickster, that now has the ability to do spells. Okay. That's all fine and good. But the wizard, the warlock, and the sorcerer does not have anything whatsoever that they can take to give them thief skills or to give them the ability to do backstab, or something like that. So and it's not that I have anything against the arcane trickster. I just use it as an example. I just don't, if I roll up a wizard and this guy rolls up a rogue and takes arcane trickster, I feel like at some point in the game, that character takes a little bit off of what my character is, because my character was dependent on being the spellcaster for the group, to do this for the group, to do that for the group. When all of a sudden, this rogue who already has a lot of badassery, given the fact that he could backstab in itself. I mean, no, but that's enough right there. I mean, that is enough to make any rogue just phenomenal.
Yes. But
now to also give them the ability to add mage hand to their skill set to use for lock picking or whatever. I mean, it's not that I don't want our group to survive or I don't want our group to succeed, but I feel like each character and each player should feel like their role is just as important as anybody else's.
Yeah.
So, and again, I was kind of looking more through the eyes of a newer player, but that is one of the things that I don't even agree with. But it's not enough to make me say, I think they should do 6th edition and get rid of this and this and this and this and this. If there's something we don't like, we just don't do it. I mean, hell, we don't like the stat system necessarily. So we have homebrewed ways of doing stats. If people knew our homebrew way of doing stats, a lot of people may think it's overkill. At first I thought it was overkill. But I see we can still make modifications to other things, which kind of defeats the purpose of upgrading those stats in some way to begin with, because if you're just going to offset that by upgrading the creatures that they're fighting or whatever, why do it to begin with? I think that goes back to a second edition thing, when we were used to having stats that were a little bit better, or whatever. But to get back to what we were saying, though, as far as like the fundamentals and stuff, it's still, it's still along the lines of what it was fundamentally. There's still a huge focus on the role play factor and how you go about creating in your mind first and then on paper this character that you're either going to play for the next 2 or 3 years or is going to die after 6 months, and then you're going to roll up another one or whatever, because obviously that's part of the game. But I just like the fact that they haven't really said, okay, we're going to take some of the role play out of it and we're going to focus more on this, and this is where the characters are contained to or whatever. Because in essence, our minds allow us to have an open world situation when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. I do feel like in some ways that's a problem, especially for somebody who is like a big video gamer. Let's say they're playing Elder Scrolls, they're playing Skyrim. They've played Skyrim for 5, 6, 7 years now, or whatever. Now they want to play Dungeons and Dragons based upon what they learned in Skyrim. If you're playing in Skyrim, if you're running along this path and all of a sudden you decide you don't want to continue on this path, you want to go this way, you can do that. So, and I feel like some players bring that thought process into the game. And if you do that, and the DM is running a pre-generated module, I mean, that kind of messes things up somewhat for the DM. But still, the fact that we play in an open world campaign, I like that. I like the fact that characters are able to do what they want to do, even if it's stupid, And we've never done anything stupid.
No, I've always been the perfect player. But that's the thing too. That's where a good dungeon master needs to be. He needs to be a good dungeon master to be able to take what the players do and work it.
Yep.
And that's if a dungeon master is just strictly the module, that's all they want to do. Right. That's you can't go do that because you got to stick to this. They can't do it. They're not going to be a very versatile dungeon master.
You don't want to pigeonhole the characters. You don't. Right.
And you come up with reasons to get them back on track.
Right.
So that's the whole idea behind it is give them those opportunities to go do other things. And that's one thing that I did like about watching Critical Role with Matt Mercer and all them. Matt Mercer is a damn good DM.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the best.
And he puts things in front of the characters to make them go off track. Right. That's what I think is phenomenal, that he'll just throw a little thing. I mean, as little as saying, okay, the character's reading the book. And then all of these players are sitting there going, well, he mentioned the book. That book must be important. All of them for an hour there tried to figure out what that person was reading. Role-playing it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He puts things in there. And that, to me, is where he's used to being able to work with, that person went this way. Okay, I'll work with that. So, yeah, it makes it harder on someone who depends on nothing but modules. But you do that enough, you'll get used to characters like that, and you'll know the tricks on how to help them, get them back on track or whatever.
But on the other hand, as experienced players, and your DM runs modules, shouldn't you go in with the mindset to know that, we're going in to have a good time together. And if this is what he's going to have prepared, I should, do everything I can to make sure we do what he has prepared. in some sense.
Yes. In some sense, I do, but ultimately, you also have to play your character.
Sure.
If you rolled up your character to where he's terrified of small spaces, dark small spaces, and the module tells him to go through a little cavern hole that you got to crawl through, the character won't want to do it.
Right.
That because he's playing his character, even though he knows the GM needs him to go through there.
New
That, there's different factors that for seasoned players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, new players, they might say, okay, I'm scared of the dark. And then next thing you know, they're running around the cavern in pitch black and not even phasing them. But a seasoned player would take that and be like, no, man, I ain't no hell no.
And see, that's the thing, though. A good seasoned player and a good seasoned DM, they would recognize that as good role playing.
Yes.
Because they would say, yes, this is what the module is wanting them to do, but he's playing his character. So, yes, to where you're right, a newer character may just be like, well, yeah, my guy's scared of it, but I'm going to go through it anyway.
Yes.
Well, no, really, you're not. It doesn't really work like that.
Right.
So, characters and races for Dungeons and Dragons. What's your favorite race to play?
My favorite race has always been an elf. And it's just been, I was amazed by elves. Mm-hmm. Mainly because it's opposite of what I am. Here I am. I'm I'm more like an ogre or, some big brute fighter, orc or something like that. Elves are graceful, quick, little, or some of them aren't even little. I mean, they're normal size, sure. But I mean, they're just a lot of stuff that I'm not, and I like playing those. It's kind of like anyone that, the big guy likes playing the smaller guys. The smaller guys like playing the big guys, right. So, yeah, that's my favorite.
And I recall you playing several elves over the years, but your most memorable one to me is the little halfling. And granted, that is opposite of what you are too.
Yes.
But it's definitely not an elf. But this little halfling creature that was... I don't even want to talk about it anymore. This dude was... He was aggravating. He was... It's aggravating. But Bo played it so good. That was one of the most memorable characters I feel like he played. And it just so much fun and so much humor there and things like that. But I think for me, race-wise, my favorite to play of all time, and you obviously already know what I'm going to say, is the dwarf. Mm-hmm. I love playing dwarfs. It was so easy to get in character. Just, well, at least from what we learned over the years, they're a little grumpy, and that sort of stuff, and it was just so easy to fall in that line of that character, but I would still play the dwarf, but every now and then I would like to play that dwarf that was just different from the rest of them. Instead of having the long hair and the beard, he was completely bald, had no beard, and instead of playing the chainmail wielding either cleric or, fighter or whatever with the big battle axe, I would want to play dwarven wizard, and dwarves are not supposed to, use magic and stuff like that. So, but for me, race-wise, it was always a dwarf. What about class? Did you ever have a favorite class that you like to play? Now, I know you said a while ago you've really delved out and really like playing the cleric and stuff now, but do you have like an all-time favorite class to play?
Then again, like I said, right now I can't say I have an absolutely favorite. When I first started, it was the fighter. Mm-hmm. I wanted to play a fighter. And then it broadened to I wanted to play a fighter or a paladin, or back when there was cavaliers, anything like that. But then I got into the Rangers. And an Elven Ranger to me was the most badass character you could play. Dual weapon wielding, the whole 9 yards to me. And they could cast spells, they can heal, nature, all that kind of stuff. But, as I've grown as a player and 5e and stuff like that, I've seen where, okay, the cleric. I wanted to play the cleric. I enjoy the cleric. I take that and I just grab it and I'm like, this is me. This is it. I've gotten into where I'm starting to play more wizards now. Mm-hmm. And with the same sense that I want to take it, I want to turn that into the most awesome wizard. I want to be the best wizard there is that can be. I don't want to be the one that's casts a spell here and there. I want it to be he casts the spell right at the exact moment that he needs to. Be smart.
Yeah.
And so I can't say I have a favorite class anymore because I'm learning so much more about them that what was my favorite is no longer, I don't even want to consider playing it. I will, but where before I'd be like, I'll play a wizard if I have to. I'd rather play the fighter. Now it's kind of like, I'll play a fighter if I have to.
Right.
And it's just, you can make, I don't care what kind of character, what kind of class you roll up, you can make it the most fun character you play or the worst character you play.
Right.
Depends on how you play it.
Yeah.
And what mind frame you go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Go in a positive mind frame and it's going to be fun. You go into it where you're like not liking it right off the bat, you're going to have a terrible time.
Yeah. You mentioned something when you was talking about the Ranger from back in the day and dual wielding. Kind of goes along with what I said earlier today, where where some characters take away from other characters, where a lot of different classes can dual wield now. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that takes away from what the Ranger used to be able to do?
It was something.
To me, that's what made the Ranger special.
It was, but the thing is that that's not supposed to be the only thing that Rangers could do. To me, I think that is one of those skills that if you look like in real life, if it was a Ranger or a Swordsmaster, a Swordsmaster would be just as well being able to use two swords as a Ranger. Mm-hmm. What made a Ranger so important is more or less their tracking, their wilderness skills. Things like that was what really the core of a Ranger is supposed to be in. Yes, they were badasses because they can wield two weapons. One had to be smaller than the other one and all that kind of stuff. But to me, maybe at first I might have thought, I wish they wouldn't have done it. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, I can see why they did it. And I don't have a problem with that. I'd still play a Ranger, which when we started playing again, that's what I was playing, was a Ranger.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think for me, for the older games, one of my favorites to play was the Cavalier, because it wasn't just a fighter, but it wasn't the goody two-shoe paladin either. The Cavalier was a little bit more flavorful than the fighter, but didn't have to always do what was right.
The goody-goody.
They did lean more towards, what was right, but they had a little bit of leeway when it came to what they were able to do and not able to do and stuff like that. So I always liked playing the fighter types, and when I was introduced to different fighter styles, like with the kits and stuff, that one was probably my favorite to play back then. Now, especially, if I was playing a dwarf, I used to like to play the grumpy dwarf Cavalier. Every now and then, play a barbarian or whatever instead. But I liked that, character type. It was always really fun to play.
Mm-hmm.
these days, I don't. I kind of like you. I don't think I have a favorite class these days. I can take. I have a really good time anymore with almost anything that I'm playing. Now, there have been things that I've rolled up and went, man, I'm just not having as good a time with this as what I initially thought I was going to, for whatever reason. But for the most part, I feel like I could have just as much fun with a half orc barbarian as what I can with a half elf warlock. I would choose the half elf warlock first if that was an option, but I can have just as much fun with the half orc barbarian, kind of like what you said though, if that's what I had to play. And what we mean by had to play is based upon the needs of the party.
Mm-hmm.
So if this guy's wanting to roll up a fighter, and this guy's wanting to roll up a magic user, and this guy's wanting to roll up a cleric, well, you kind of have to fill in the gaps. Now, with a cleric and a fighter and a magic user, you've got most of your bases covered, but you still have the opportunity to play like a rogue or a bard even that has roguish skills, because that is the part of that gap that needs filled right there, is they don't have the roguish archetype. So that's what we mean by if we have to play the barbarian, because I mean, we've never went into a situation though where I don't think everybody just decided they were going to play the same thing. So wasn't something we really ever had to worry about a whole lot. But because for the most part, we want everybody in our groups, especially, we want everybody to play what they want to play.
Yes.
So I'm okay with a group of all fighters. If they want to go in with a group of all fighters and they don't have a rogue, they don't have a cleric, they don't have a magic user. Okay, this is going to be fun. So, and if they want to do something just opposite, if they wanted to go in with a group of all clerics, that would probably be like the best group ever. This group of all clerics going, because now they do have some fighting skills. They can all heal themselves, and if you're anything like our Druid in our game, that's all he's going to do anyways, heal himself. But got you, Frank. But anyway, so for me, I don't think I have a favorite these days, but I really like, if I have a choice, I'm going to play some sort of spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
With the cleric actually being at the end of my list. Now, I would play it. It is a spellcaster. They can do things that they used to, they couldn't. They can delve into wizard type spells now with certain aspects of rolling it up later on. But for me, that would be I would go with a more spellcaster type character these days. But so you've created characters, many characters over the years. You've created them from start of 2nd edition when you started playing with paper and pencil and dice and scratch and calculators and all that stuff, to recently creating several different characters on D&D Beyond. Preference. If you're going to create a character right now, what would you prefer to do? I understand the ease makes us go with D&D Beyond, but do you have a preference on how you actually roll your character up these days?
I do, because of the ease of D&D Beyond. I much rather roll up the character on D&D Beyond. It is half the time you can get, because there was nothing unusual for us to say, okay, we're gonna go and take this session to roll up characters, and we'd spend 6 hours rolling up characters and not even be done with them.
Not even get to play, right?
And with D&D Beyond, you sit there and you do it, and then the next thing you know, you're done.
Right. And with D&D Beyond, it figures out so many things for you that you don't have to do anymore. You don't have to figure out, okay, well, what's this going to be? Okay, so my hit points are going to be, all right. And then my pluses, so my skill's going to be. No, I mean, it does all that for you. It takes some of the thought process out of it. Now, for you younger kids that are playing, I still suggest it the other way, because you still need to work on your math and your reading and your writing and stuff like that. But for us more experienced players that don't need any more practice with writing and math because that sucks and we're going to be horrible at it no matter what. We're just going to go with what's easy, and that's D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
I really like a mix of both. I like still doing the dice roll for stats.
Oh, definitely.
And then I like the books. Just kind of sit there, even if it's the book on D&D Beyond, I'll do a little research and whatnot, and then kind of go into D&D Beyond and transfer my actual dice rolls over and stuff that I read out of the books, and that sort of stuff. And then with our, we still we like to do our own backgrounds and stuff. Not the actual background you pick for the character, but your backstory, I guess I should say.
Yes.
And then a lot, of what could happen in the game, we base upon that. So, I guess I like a mix of both for myself. Honestly, character creation used to be one of my favorite things about the game. I think that was where some of the imagination process came in, was just sitting there thinking about what we were going to play and how we were going to play it. And then once you actually start playing it, of course, you have just as much fun. But I really like the character creation process. So, kind of along the same lines, I guess we're both going to be on the same side of the fence on this one here. But virtual dice, real dice.
Nothing to it. They're not even close. They can take virtual dice and just stick it.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it altogether, because I'm sorry, there's one thing that makes D&D, and that's rolling those dice.
That's correct.
Rolling those dice.
Now we've got one player that plays with us that he uses that
virtual dice
all the time. Now he'll still use his regular dice every now and then, but once we really got into character creation on D&D Beyond, I mean, Curtis really, really likes utilizing that virtual dice. And that's fine. I mean, that's what it's there for. But for me, that was one of the cool things about the game back when we first started was, anytime you had a game beforehand where you played with dice, it was just six-siders, or whatever. Which you wouldn't have even called them that then. You would have just called it a set of dice.
Yes.
The only reason we call it a six-sider is because of Dungeons and Dragons. But to be able to use different shaped dice and different colors and things like that, that was, to me, was always a really important part of the process.
Oh, yeah.
So down to, do I have a full set of this? I think I lost my four-sider. Well, hell, I don't even want to use any of these dice anymore because I don't even have the full set anymore. It's like the other day, we were actually playing, and I had this die that I used, my 20-sider, all the time. And it used to just be great. I mean, natural 20 after natural 20 after natural 20. And then it stopped. And, stopped to the point to where it made me so mad that I just took that entire set of dice and I just threw them over. Well, I didn't throw them, but I slammed them down in Bo's area and I said, I don't even want these dice anymore. They're just yours. I don't even want them. He just looked at me like, you serious? Yeah, I don't even want them anymore. It's just, as a matter of fact, I threw one of them in the trash. And his brother dug it out.
I got him.
So then I guess from a certain point of view, my next question, it would have to be no. But is one set of dice okay? Can you go in? Could you go in and play with just one?
Hell no.
Why not?
Because
of that example right there.
You don't know what's going to be cold, what dice. And, we sit here, we talk about, that dice is unlucky. That dice won't roll good for me. It's a 20-sided dice. It's got the same amount of sides as this other one. But there's always going to be a set that is good for you, a set that's not good for you. I had one dice that the players hated me using. Whenever I would run, we called it the chaos dice because we never knew what it was going to do. But when I needed it to roll 20s against them, it did it. If it needed to roll a fumble, it did it. So,
there's been times with that particular die he's talking about that other players have been in a situation to where they needed to roll a natural 20 and they would be like, Bo, can I please use that dice? And I swear to you, They would take that dice. He would let them use it every now and then. They would roll it, and it would be exactly what they would need almost every single time. So the whole point of the matter is you didn't want to use that dice all the time.
No.
Because then that took the special quality away from it. As a matter of fact, Bo still got that die. And it's been a long time since I've seen him use it. But it's almost vault worthy now. It's like almost time to put it up, but you still keep it in the box because you just never
know
separate from the one that really, really changed the game for you. I'm the same way. I don't have anything against somebody who just comes in with one set of dice, especially a new player. I would prefer them have one set of dice as opposed to not have any dice. But yeah, I'm the same way. There's absolutely no way I can have just one set of dice. Back years ago when we were playing a lot, we all had so many freaking dice that you didn't know sometimes whose was whose when they would get put on the table. But like Bo had this fishing tackle box, and all his were spread out inside this fishing tackle box. And his brother had like a metal round cookie container, kept all his in. And granted, we all had different things, but and I had a Crown Royal bag, but Bo used Crown Royal bags in the past too. But just at that particular time, dice everywhere. I mean, if between the three of us, me and him and his brother, and a couple, 2 or 3 other guys that were playing, back when we were living together, roommates, I bet you on occasion there had to have been 2,000 dice in that house.
Oh, I would say so.
And you're never going to use them. Never going to use them all. But
nope.
I would rather have a bag full of dice and only going to use 8 of them out of there, never touch the rest of them, than just have those 8. I don't understand that necessarily, but
I don't either. But I understand. I feel it. I feel that.
And I definitely had my favorites. Like just the other day, this was my favorite. It was an actual good set of dice. It was a high quality set of dice. It wasn't one of these $3 or $4 sets that come in this bag of the pound bag or whatever. This was a good set of dice, and I'm just like, I'm done with it. See ya.
Yep.
Good luck, Bo.
I haven't got to use them yet.
I don't recommend it.
I might.
Oh, I know you're gonna. So, you've been playing, obviously, a few years longer than I have because you're the one that introduced it to us. So, basically, you've been playing since around 1987. How long do you foresee playing role-playing games in general?
I plan on playing role-playing games until my mind can't do it.
Until you,
because my body will still be able to do it as long as I can go.
Wouldn't that be an interesting time to do it, though? Wouldn't that make you like an actual Malkavian if you're playing vampire and you actually have some sort of
disorder?
To where you probably shouldn't be doing this kind of thing anymore because you're mentally not capable, but it really puts you in line to play specific characters.
The absent-minded wizard.
So you feel like you'll play for just as long as you're capable?
As long as I have friends who is willing to play, I don't see me ever quitting playing. Because I enjoyed this. It's one of those things that once you buy the books, you can play. I mean, it don't cost you more money unless you're wanting to buy more dice or the newest expansion to it or whatever. But, and as long as you have the friends who are interested in it, there's no reason to quit.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we've gone, even us, we went from playing all the time, then we got into our middle years where life.
Yeah, where we were raising our families.
Yeah, we were raising families and everything, and now we've gotten back into it because our kids have grown. We don't need to be right there. Most of our kids are grown.
But,
Some grown
right.
better than others, but I mean,
but even when we were raising our families, we did still
yes.
get together. I mean, my son, who you guys seen in one of our very first videos, who played the younger me, he got his very first haircut over at Bo and his wife's house, and that kid cried and cried and cried. But when he went into the bathroom, he looked like an infant still, even though he was almost 2 years old, or maybe even a little older. When he come out of the bathroom and his hair was cut and almost gone, he looked like a little young, fella. I mean, it's totally different. But just to give you an example, I mean, yeah, we still did get together and play. We didn't always play Dungeons and Dragons
no.
Vampire. Now, our wives did play with us at the time. They both rolled up characters. I think your wife got into it a little more than mine did. Mine just kind of was along for the ride, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
But we still tried to get together on a pretty much a weekly basis. Now there were spans of 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, where it just didn't happen for whatever reason. But we would play. But when we get together, we would play other games. We'd play Monopoly or Pictionary or Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. We played once. They decided they were never going to play with me again.
No, not with him.
And Bo won't play Monopoly anymore with me and Gilbert. So I mean, that's 2 situations and 2 games now that he won't play with me anymore. But
nope.
That's a totally different story for a totally different time. But it's a good one though. I think I feel the same way. I think, especially now that the kids are grown and gone, and the responsibility. Do we still have responsibilities? Yes, but it's not like what we had, when they were in school or when they were, young infants or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Our priorities and our that sort of stuff is just not as pressing as what it used to be. So it gives us the opportunity now to keep getting together almost on a weekly basis. Now we have a very versatile group for the most part. I mean, we've discussed that when the game first started, you were kind of like social outcasts that came together and created these playing groups, and a lot of the social outcasts were the same type of people, whether they had been nerds or were just picked on for whatever reason, or they were the new kid that never got accepted, or whatever.
Yes.
Our group today, though, and I think this would describe a lot of groups, is just so versatile. Like, I work in the 911 business. I'm a 911 dispatch supervisor. Bo is a welder / butcher, but more butcher these days.
Yep.
Him and his family own a butcher shop, a meat shop, that concentrates on a lot of it is deer processing for deer seasons and stuff like that. But then they also have their own sort of
the cattle and stuff.
And stuff too. So if you're ever in the area and you want some good stuff, make sure you hit up
for sure.
Sheer Farms. But then his brother, who also does that, also works for the state of Missouri on the highway department.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a individual that is an actual police officer in the group. And then we have the one guy who probably fits the role more than anything. He is a professional computer IT guy.
Yep.
So the group is very versatile in what we do for a living, but we all come together and play the game and have a really good time. And I feel like a lot of groups these days are probably like that. Some of them probably have similarities, like with Matt Mercer's group. Most of them are actors or voice actors or whatever.
Yes.
But their backgrounds and whatnot are going to be totally different, I think. And I think a lot of the groups these days are going to be like that, as opposed to what it was in the earlier years, where oh, well, you're here because you're a nerd, and you're a nerd, and you're a nerd, and I'm a nerd. So, that's why we're all here together playing. Well, that's
Yes.
not the case with this. Don't even think that it is. Um,
I'm too cool.
Well, guys, I think that's going to round out our Dungeons and Dragons conversation. We can honestly, I feel like me and Bo could sit here and talk about Dungeons and Dragons or gaming as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
For, gosh, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. The next one we have discussed. We're going to see how this one goes, this podcast. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed our discussion on this Dungeons and Dragons. And again, this was from our perspective, our opinions, our experiences. So there may be a lot of things that, you sit back and go, well, I wonder why they didn't talk about that, or I wonder why they didn't hit on that, or whatever. Put it in the comments. Nothing's to say that we can't come back and do this one again based upon, your comments.
Yes.
Because, it's going to bring up some good points. So we may have to do a revised, advanced, second edition of our Dungeons and Dragons.
There we go.
Podcast. But anyway, we've discussed topics for the next one. We're pretty sure we know what it's going to be, but we'll just see how it goes. Guys, we appreciate you being here for this, supporting us in what we're doing here, allowing us the opportunity to entertain you for the amount of time that you are allowing us to, and just giving us the opportunity to have a good time, be ourselves, and provide to you what you may need as far as just some good quality time with you and your cell phone or whatever you're watching it on.
Yeah, exactly.
So make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell so you know when we put up new videos, and well, it just gives both tingly feelings all over. And we'll see you next time right here on Critical Hits
and Bad Misses.